Good morning. Welcome to another production of Veterans for Peace, the TV show. Today we have some really interesting guests, so I'm going to start with a short introduction of myself, and we're just going to go right down the line and let everybody introduce themselves, and then we will get into the meat of our discussion today, which is rights and democracy, which is an increasingly important group in the state of Vermont. As I said, my name is David Ross. I'm a graduate of South Burlington High School and the University of Vermont. Had a career in medical stuff, and at this point, I can look back on almost 50 years since I got out of the Army. I was discharged after 2 years in Vietnam on the 4th of July in 1967, and have just watched these wars ever since, and war is not the answer.
Well, thanks. Hi everybody, my name is Grant Taylor. I grew up in Vermont, born in 1981, graduated South Burlington High School, same high school, 99. Graduated from CCV with a degree in environmental science. Worked a great many years in construction in Vermont, and I saw a lot of interesting things while I worked all over the state, installing things like renewable energy and also fixing old infrastructure, and paying attention to how regulation and everything kind of affected our job. It was kind of a breath of fresh air to learn later on in life about this group, Rights and Democracy, is going to help us start to connect some of that stuff. Yeah, so that's who I am.
Thanks. My name is Jeffrey Caesar. I'm the Outreach Director at Rights and Democracy. My background, I grew up in Virginia. My father, he's a Vietnam vet. My brother is a Marine. And I've worked very closely with veterans issues in the past. I worked for veterans in defense affairs, as well as for Virginia Supportive Housing, helping, working on policy to increase veterans' access to affordable housing and housing in general. It's really unfortunate in our country that our government is spending trillions of dollars, to send our youth overseas and stripping them of all that they have psychologically, physically, emotionally, and bringing them back home with nothing to show for it, and a lot to show for it. But not always. But our government is not helping them out when they are getting sick later down the road, when they need housing, and it's very unfortunate. And so I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much.
I'm Shay Totten. I'm the communications director at Rights and Democracy. Before that, I was also a founding board member of Rights and Democracy, and we'll talk a little bit more about sort of how Rights and Democracy came into being. I grew up in Vermont. I grew up in the Northeast Kingdom up on the Canadian border. Graduated from North Country Union High School. Went to Bennington College to study writing. I spent most of my career in journalism, investigative journalism, political commentary, working on public access shows like this, as well as PBS and mainstream media. One of the things that has sort of driven sort of my work, both as a journalist and now as Rights and Democracy, is that growing up in the Northeast Kingdom, I grew up in single mom, raising 3 kids, abject poverty, and you don't really sort of lose the taste and flavor of that kind of poverty. And part of the justice work that I've focused on mostly in my career has been to kind of lift up those voices who otherwise are marginalized. And I find that the sort of organizing capacity that we do at Rights and Democracy, where we really bring people together, and then through those communities, the natural leaders that come out of that, who are often marginalized and outside of power, help them find a sort of path to their own power and reclaiming it. So that's what's sort of really been my focus at Rights and Democracy, is sort of help bringing that out, working with people like Grant, who host our Rad TV show, and others around the state, because we have chapters all over the place who are working on bringing these voices through media, like PEG channels, like through VCAM, places in Bennington, even in some of the places that we work in New Hampshire. So looking forward to talking a little bit more about what we do here and why we do it.
No, I won't delay that. I'm Dave Ransom. I got caught in the Korean conflict, but I'm generally, basically, and forever a peace guy. So it's very frustrating to other people, I know. Anyway, I want to hear more about this because this is just the kind of thing I keep hoping for and working for all my life.
So how do you guys want to start out? You want to give a good background?
Sure. Why don't I give I'll give a quick little background on sort of what Rights and Democracy, sort of how it came to be, because it's nice to hear that that we have this, people see us, and it's not just perception. I mean, there is a lot of reality behind it, as an increasingly powerful and effective group and organization, both here in Vermont and now as well as in New Hampshire. So anyway, so Rights and Democracy was launched Labor Day 2015. So we're less than 2 years old. We have currently around, I would say, close to 10,000 active members in Vermont, and an additional number of members, just under 10,000 in New Hampshire.
Launched.
We launched.
How did that
Kicked
happen?
it off. We had a big celebration and party at Battery Park in Burlington, and from there began to sort of talk to folks around the state around some core issues that we were working on at the time. Some of those early issues we worked on were, first it was early voter registration, and then same-day voter registration. So things that would give more people access to democracy. After that, we also sort of the executive director, and I was on the founding board, so it was about 15 or 20 of us who really sort of spent a good year and a half before that launch really thinking about what kind of organization this could look like, and what would we want it to be a truly sort of sustaining, a more radical, and really something that was going to really affect the kind of change that we saw lacking in the current political system. Whether it's 2, 3, or 4 parties, the party structure was sort of irrelevant. It was really, how do we sort of get more people and more people's voices, not just in the door and at the table, but then how do we have them reclaim that power and stay at the table? And that was something that we really felt like was missing in some of these other either single issue or even multi-issue advocacy groups. So our vision was really to have a multi-issue, truly grassroots organization. So we look at issues that affect environmental, economic, racial, and social justice issues, because as we all know increasingly, they're all interconnected. They always have been interconnected, but many times, because of many groups would focus on one to sort of, dive in on just one area. We don't see that. We want multiple entry points, lower the barriers of participation in both our democracy and also reclaiming political power.
I'm thinking about the amount of money that the United States spends on the military. We actually, as a nation, spend more money on the military than all the military budgets of the entire rest of the world. And I'm wondering if your organization has a position on our, politely said, foreign adventures. We're involved in 7 shooting wars right now, 7. Very few of us can even name all of them. And so I look at the amount of money that's spent on the military, and yet this poor woman on television, a little sweet lady, I voted for Trump because he's going to make America great again, and now he's going to take away my Meals on Wheels. What'll I do? Vote for somebody else next time. I don't, but the point, I can't say what came into my mind because it's impolite. But the whole thing is, I look at all these things that are going to be taken away and reallocated to the people who are already in that wealthiest, rarefied percentage floating on the top. And where does Rights and Democracy stand on decreasing the military budget, ending war? Essentially, I'm looking at this as the pot from which to reallocate stuff. Plus, we have natural defenses. Canada's not going to attack us. South America is not going to come through Mexico and attack us. Nobody can get boots on the ground across the Atlantic or the Pacific. One nuke air blast and your whole fleet of soldiers and battleships is gone. We're probably about the safest location in the world. So we're really looking at the use of our military as like the old Roman imperial system. The military is how we control governments. I mean, we're complaining about the Russians fooling around in our election. We routinely invest billions in the outcome of elections all over the world. And when that doesn't work, we send in the military or we create a paramilitary. So it's really a lot of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
What do you guys look at for shifting money out of the military from this like over defense, which is like a welfare state for those who invest in military industry, to meeting the needs of this poor little woman who would really like to stay with Meals on Wheels?
Right. So as a bi-state organization, we don't have an explicit stance on the military just yet, and that's something that we can definitely work to define more moving forward. However,
well, politically, it could be a hindrance too. I mean, I'm not saying you need to go there.
Right.
I'm just suggesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And when looking at the military-industrial complex and how trillions of dollars are spent going overseas, trillions of dollars of taxpayer money that would be going to help feed the elderly woman who's now having her Meals on Wheels taken away, helping students and helping invest in our students' education, infrastructure in our schools, ensuring that our roads are decent, that the inequality, the systems of inequality here in America are taken care of before we're going overseas and trying to democratize other countries that already have their own systems of government. What we're looking at is it's economic. Where people aren't going to war because they want to shoot people or spread democracy. They're going to war because of their economic interests. And as far as I'm concerned, you've got these multinational corporations who are pulling trillions of dollars off of the backs of people overseas, and nothing's coming to show back here in the United States for it.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it, we're a capitalist country. Okay, I can go with that for right now. But if we're a capitalist country, then we should be buying products from other countries at the price that they can get for those. And if somebody else can pay more for this, that, or the other, lithium, for example, for all the new batteries, if somebody else is going to pay more, then we'll have to pay as much or more than them. It's the draconian undermining of people's governments and economies solely to the benefit of corporations and their investors.
Right.
And from that, we slaughter tens, thousands, millions.
In many ways, our military has become the strong arm of economic imperialism. Where it's one front. It's just one front of a larger scheme. We've got the military-industrial complex. We've got major corporations that are going overseas and forcing out local business in developing countries.
It's just like the mob. The mob has accountants, products and services. Yeah. They have enforcers. The militaries are enforcers. Do what we want, or we'll get somebody in your place that will do what we want.
And they have people that are, like the World Bank and IMF, who are on the other end saying, here's a great loan, do this, and now you're tied to us. You can have $22 million, but pay it back in an unrealistic time frame. Also, we're gonna put our corporations and our businesses inside your land and not pay your workers, not pay taxes to you. You'll be beholden.
Not reclaim the environment we destroy in the process of extracting wealth.
Absolutely, and it's frightening. Do we have? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to mention. I think where Rights and Democracy, I might refer to them as Rad a couple times during the show. So if I say Rad, that's what I'm talking about. The way that Rad really helps Vermonters to affect something like that. International military spending. I mean, as a citizen, when I would wake up in the morning, I go to work or whatever, and I talk to my friends, talk to my family, I don't feel like there's anybody I can speak to say, hey, reduce that budget, please. You know, let's get a little bit more. How do I have a vehicle to help change that? And again, that's where Rad is coming together. 10,000 members in Vermont. I was there on the kickoff day, the Labor Day kickoff. There was a lot of different groups there, all voicing this need, this call together. And I think that's what is really going to be helpful on the bigger scale, is just being able to bring out people's voices. Now, you got a TV show, you know, we have a way to get our voices out, but there's a lot of other people around us that we know feel the same way, and we're trying to kind of get them into groups together and talk to each other and then say, hey, what
Grant,
should we work on as a campaign?
How does that operate? How do you get to that wonderful goal?
And so right now we're actually at the beginning of our Democracy Summer. We just had our kickoff last week. It was an awesome event it was based in Burlington. However, we had house parties all throughout the state of Vermont, and the show was live streamed with different Rad leader at each party. And the purpose of this was really to start triggering and building community in areas all throughout Vermont where you've got local groups that have been popping up all around the state, and they're looking for an outlet. They're looking for a way to really get involved.
Tie in.
Yeah, and tie them into the unified front. And so what we're doing with the Democracy Summer is we're organizing a series of town hall events and rallies all throughout the state. And the local organizing teams like in Bennington, Rutland, now growing up into the Northeast Kingdom, they'll be holding these events where the community can actually come out and voice their opinion. Since the election, there's been so much discontent and righteous fear of what's going on in our government at a national level, at an international level, but also at a state and local level. And these organizations are now coming together, and what we're doing is we're hoping to help uplift the organizations and help create a unified front so that we can move forward and actually make real steps towards real change in the next few years. One of the things that we tend to not really take into account as we ask for change or fight for change is that this is an incremental process. This just doesn't happen overnight. If you're thinking about impeaching Trump more than you're thinking about going out to vote, then in your local election, that's a problem, and we need to have a conversation. This is about building power, and so Rights and Democracy right now, through our Democracy Summer, one of the major components that we're working with, that we're creating a candidate pipeline. And so what this is doing is we're going into the communities, helping find local leaders and trying to make sure that they have the tools that they can run for local office, state office, from every level, whether it's school board or commission on city council to the state level. You can see very clearly during the last election, we supported very deeply a lot of the progressive candidates that are currently now in office. Our Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman he's a Rad member, and he from the jump we've been working with him because he has a great progressive values. He's a Vermonter. He's a farmer first and foremost. He's a lieutenant governor second, and these are the kinds of people that we need in power. Celine Colburn, Brian Chena. We have also House representatives. Deanna Gonzalez, some of our members, she's the representative in Winooski. Kaya Morris. These are the individuals that represent Vermont. These are also the individuals that are representing the faces of Vermont that are least represented. And this is important, and this is not directly the composition of Vermont is very different to a lot of states. And this isn't just while race is incredibly important, gender is incredibly important, intersectionality of the LGBTQIA population is incredibly important. So we need to be making sure that we're putting these voices and all the voices around. The economically disenfranchised, regardless of any of these things, we're working to uplift. Some of the base of our work where we just finished is by strengthening democracy, we're looking to with our Jobs, Justice, and Climate campaign, which is kind of our overarching outline for the work that we do. We've just been working on the Raise the Minimum Wage campaign. And the basis of this is, yeah, a livable wage is important because people need to live. However, what this is also doing is working to create systemic change in the state of Vermont and New Hampshire, where the most economically vulnerable amongst us are able to be uplifted. You've got the age-old adage of, you've got, the single mother, she's got children, she works across town. What does this look like on voting day? On voting day, she's got to drop her kids off, go across town, come back, pick her kids up. Is there time in there for her to go to the polls and vote? If you have trouble, paying rent, feeding your family, you're not thinking about going to the next school board or running for city council.
Right.
There's another thing too. You consider some of the groups, Walmart always comes to mind simply because it is a mega place. You talk about minimum wage. A lot of people that work at these low income places, what they don't get paid, even at a survival level, ends up getting compensated out of the public coffers as food stamps, medical support, rent assistance, and other things. So actually, you're looking at some of the richest corporations in America having the income they pay out subsidized by the federal taxes, which, because of the way that the tax structure is set up, are coming out of middle and lower income pockets.
Absolutely.
Hello?
It's insanity. It's insanity. And you look at it, when we look to the states that have successfully increased minimum wage, look at the studies. It does not necessarily lead to increased prices. Of course, this is going to be difficult for small businesses to do, but it's not going to be an overnight change of increasing the minimum wage. It's an incremental change over the course of years to get to that $15 an hour. But let's step back and actually think and look at it. That's still not even enough. That's still that's close to the edge, because the minimum wage from the 70s to where it is now, it has not kept up with inflation. If you want to talk about what is comparable of a minimum wage that is comparable to what it was in 1970s, you'd be looking at some odd like $20 an hour. These are realistic.
Yeah.
And it's we have to, as a society, in working to increase minimum wage or ensure that our workers are being treated equitably, we have to really reframe how we're thinking about it. If you're paying a few more bucks for your goods and your services, that is fine. Because at the end of the day, just as you said, it's the workers that are subsidizing the consumer.
They're less well-off workers when they're not even well-off themselves.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe
There's
you
another
guys
thought too, all the terrorism. I mean, we're going to build walls.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I want to build a wall, bring our military home and keep them inside it, but
Yeah.
that's a different wall. We're going to build walls.
I have to build another home.
We're going
Can
to
you help me?
increase TSA, and I'm not sure TSA, from what I've seen, they're not very effective.
No.
They make you stand on people's old bubble gum in your socks, take off your brass buckle, which doesn't even set off a machine because it's non-ferrous, and they're, these people never had a science course. I don't know. So, but what you're looking at, who is doing the shootings? Yeah, you had one in California, a couple of others. Look at who is going and doing the shooting. Is it black people? Hispanics? Muslims? It's your so-called native-born white American Christians. These are the people going postal, whether it's bowling for Columbine or the latest shooting in Florida or God knows wherever. I probably missed a few. At some point, you just start to tune this stuff out. But all this stuff, it's not coming from out there. It's coming from people that are so disaffected, struggling within our social structure, that in the end, they essentially tend to commit suicide by police and set this death off by killing a lot of other people just so they don't go quietly. They go saying something like, you want to see how pissed off I am? Check this out.
Right.
Yeah.
We kind of are starting to hope that if you're pissed off, come to a Rights and Democracy meeting and talk to us, okay?
Yes.
You know, that's,
Or Vets for Peace. And if you have problems with the VA, if you have problems with PTSD, you can come to us. We can get you personally to the right people.
Right.
Yeah, and just getting back to a little bit about both your question and also following up on what Grant was talking about. I mean, I think and stepping back to initially, what I didn't get to in the initial part of it, which I think is a sort of core notion of why Rights and Democracy has become effective and has quickly attracted as many sort of members. And that's by members is like people signing a petition, helping to take action in any form we consider joining membership. And then from there, we also have people who, like Grant, come to our organizing team meetings. In many parts of the state, they're monthly. In Bennington, which is our largest organizing team, they meet bi-monthly. So they're meeting every other week. It's 50 to 75 people coming together, and they're in Bennington. So this is you talk about a place that is economically distressed, is being wiped out by the opioid epidemic, where you have a state prosecutor down there and a police chief who believe in locking people up as opposed to getting treatment, and you're finding sort of that kind of democratic participation and that sort of wanting to sort of reclaim the power that will reshape and sort of keep their community whole. That's where Rights and Democracy has filled the void that has not been met by either elected officials, political parties, or even some of the local institutions. And so we have aside from Bennington, but we have chapters, organizing teams in Brattleboro, in Bennington, Rutland, that Middlebury, Bristol,
Washington County,
yeah, Central Vermont and Washington County. We've got some cropping up, getting ready to prepare in the lower Mad River Valley, past Rochester, down in Hancock, where we had one of our Rights and Democracy, Democracy Summer live stream events, sort of house parties. We've got certainly a team here in Burlington, and then we've got another one cropping up in Stowe that's been really becoming very active. We've got more interest coming out of the Northeast Kingdom. I mean, so these folks are coming together, and we're giving them a vehicle for they see these issues being connected. So whether it's someone who is completely maxed out, stressed out, doesn't know what to do next, we're working to sort of help fill the void with that kind of voice and give the kind of support that they need, both in terms of just how do you move out of that paralysis and into a place of power. And I think that's part of what has sort of really, channeled, a lot of the energy behind, Rights and Democracy and what we continue to do. And, and getting to the point about budgets, I mean, our core premise is that, we believe in a people's budget. And a people's budget is a budget that actually supports people first, right? That's who gets put first. So whether it's the elderly, whether it's the poor, whether it's the sick, whether it's veterans, it's those who need most taken care of in our society. And as the richest nation on earth, there's no reason why we should have someone who's homeless or someone who's hungry or someone who's sick and should not be cast aside. And I think
There are enough houses boarded that have been boarded up by banks to take care of all the homeless, but they say boarded up.
Absolutely. And so, do we see, getting back to your original point about the military budget, do we see that, do we need sort of a position to understand that, a lopsided military budget that only benefits the wealthiest of the wealthiest and the corporations by advancing economic imperialism around the world, is that a continued sort of sane approach to sort of how we rebuild our infrastructure here at home? We held an event, the other night, and Grant can talk a little bit about this too, where we brought in an author called How to Kill a City, which is all focused on gentrification. And one of the core things that he really mentioned, I think sunk in with a number of people, is that fine, we live in a capitalist society for now, as you mentioned before. But if we're going to do that, I think what we've forgotten is that capitalism is not just me first, you whenever. It's really there's always built-in inequality.
It's
in
a system of exchanging values through the medium of money.
There always is going to be that inequity. But capitalism should have And society should have a mechanism by which to right those inequities in order to keep that system functioning as it does. You know, the number of people who are on benefits who work for big corporations like Walmart and others, you know, is immense. And you know, quite frankly, the pain that is about to come because of the Republican healthcare proposals and their budget proposals are going to hit those people the hardest.
Yes.
So those people who are already economically distressed, upon whom corporations are already making millions of dollars and shoring it off overseas, those are the folks who are going to see. It's like they're undermining their own sort of economic strip mining system that they've set up by even strip mining what's left. And so what is going to be left after that, right? And I think that's where we, you know, have seen it's not just the election of Trump. I mean, rights and democracy was growing before Trump.
Yes.
You know, and so it's because we've seen this sort of neoliberal economic approach, whether it's in Burlington or in Washington, D.C., has failed and failed miserably, and we are trying to sort of pull together the threads of what should be a more populist and more, you know, progressive agenda, you know, small p, just something that actually unifies and gets people together. And so, you know, that's, to me, it's like that's what's really, you know, I sort of see it like that's what brings people to the table, right? Is because it's not just about a policy or a person, it's really about bringing people together who have a shared sense of value about what we want next.
I want to interject a thought for our viewers/listeners. I was once in the position that I know some of you are, because I was there. And it's sort of like, what can I do about all this? I'm just me. Well, Woody Allen once famously stated, half of life is just showing up. So if you care about stuff, what you might want to do is just show up at one of their events, meetings, and listen, talk to people, see what's going on up front and personal. That's how we get involved, not because we're smart, we're great public speakers, we write extraordinarily well, we're so high energy, but it comes from a sense of caring and a responsibility. Democracy, participatory democracy, we need to participate. All these problems come from the fact that we've been asleep at the wheel for so long, and now the vehicle's about ready to go over the embankment.
To our credit, we've been distracted drivers, right? We've been distracted. From the wheel,
We've had our television. We've had our. Are we looking at the top of women now, or are we looking at their butts, or are we looking at their legs, or what they're wearing? I mean, do we want this air conditioner or that patio set? Well, most of us don't have much use for any of it, but
But we got to make a choice, right? So
make a choice to stand up for yourself, and make a choice to stand up for your neighbor. And at the risk of sounding like those other guys, take a risk of standing up for America.
We'll have a potluck in Vermont. You have a potluck, you get together.
Right.
But I wanted to return to what Jeff said earlier on the minimum wage. And I don't know what you guys have tested on this, and I can't remember the author, but there was a lady, I think in New York City, who got rid of all her possessions and went to work trying to make a living. And her discovery in the book that she read, I wish I could remember it, they probably know it at the Peace and Justice Center, was that it required $25 an hour wages just to keep your head above the water.
That was Barbara Ehrenreich's book, Nickel and Dime.
Well, it's Barbara Ehrenreich.
I'm pretty sure that because she did do that. She did do where she actually, she actually went to work in different jobs over a course of time to try and work the minimum wage and actually see what it was like.
That was Barbara. Okay.
The exhaustion, the inability to get to meetings, for your kids.
Yeah.
It was just and she would chronicle her own sort of experience in this, but then also chronicle the experience of others.
And that's politically engineered into the economic system. Right. If you can keep people so busy they can't even get their mouth above water to hyperventilate, how are they going to find out what's going on? How are they going to intelligently vote? If they can vote at all, it's going to be based on that like 20 minutes of TV or something where somebody gets up there with a political statement that's more often than not even true, and it's like sound bites.
Right.
Make America great. Build a wall. I mean, no, I'm sorry. Despite what everybody says, Trump is a genius. I mean, he started engineering this back before his TV show.
Absolutely.
He's not dumb. And I'm shocked at how the American people are buying into it, because I thought I was smart enough, but I'm not. No, I mean, Trump stumped me.
Yeah.
I never, whatever. But now we have this reality, and especially lower income people, but all of us, we are all going to start losing big time. And as you said, they're strip mining the bottom now.
Yeah.
They're taking a look at what's left and saying, great, how do we get that too? And this is people who have money. You absolutely cannot begin to imagine the amount of money that is owned or directly controlled by such a tiny, tiny percentage of people in both of the major political parties.
Well, and Dave, getting back to these guys, my experience is that every president, big office holder, and so on goes in with all this blarney, and they're not in touch with the people. And slowly, that democracy that had been so representative of quilting bees and what have you, the local fire department, the local fire chief in Stowe, just recently in the paper was bemoaning the fact, this is Stowe, and we think of as a prosperous community. In Stowe, he was worried about the fact that there weren't enough volunteers for the fire department, for the rescue squad. They pull people out of the ice.
The difference is that in not too recent history, government and the rich basically bought off the less well-heeled, the poorer people, by having some welfare, food stamps, little safety nets, so they wouldn't go crazy. Now, starting a little before Bush, this last run of presidents we've gone through,
all of them.
and the people that support them have said, what? Why are we giving them anything?
The heroes are on the local level.
Let's start to take this back. I mean, that money's there. It should be ours.
To look at this the Trump phenomenon, right? It was to keep us distracted from working on things together. Divide and conquer. Either you're on the side of the police in this country, or you're on the side of Black Lives Matter. But whichever side you're on, you sit there and argue on Facebook with people. Don't have the time of day to then go out and talk to your legislators about how we're going to provide health care or raise the minimum wage. But if you're on one of these fights, and we keep fighting, but that's again where I see Rights and Democracy bringing people together, and locally, and kind of fighting that divide and conquer thing, and spread you all out and fight about every little thing that you can think of, let alone trying to keep up with your neighbors, or get that new car or whatever. But really uniting and bring, would you say, unified front, kind of a movement, right?
Yeah, ensuring that everyone is coming to the table, at least everyone who's willing to come to the table and can come to the table. Because that's, that's again, something that we've continued to see just throughout politics and government in the history of this country. Keep silence the masses. Placate them with, the things that they need or that they think that they need, and let's do things behind the scenes. So many of our public officials, most of our public officials, they'll come and smile and say one thing, and when they get to the back room, they're off doing another. They're the people that they're donors, or they're friends that they're being, they're nepotistically tying, passing off resources or jobs and opportunities to, are the ones that are making the decisions, not us.
And what you alluded to on Democracy Now! This week, Naomi Klein, who has basically spent her lifetime studying sort of like how governments manipulate and screw and cheat people. She's just come out with a new book, and I'm embarrassed to be 71 years old and just cannot remember the name of her newest book. But she goes into the current situation. Yeah, I'm going to get a copy and read it and highlight the heck out of it. But what she warned us about was shockwaves. So what Trump is doing is every time people kind of get their balance back and say, oh my God, I need to, another shockwave.
Right.
And essentially she is saying that it's a deliberate part of the Trump strategy and the neo-colonial and outright new right fascist
Yep.
thing is to keep slamming people in the face so hard that they can't get their balance to effectively reorganize, which circles back to the necessity for organizations like Rights and Democracy. Veterans for Peace is a great organization, but by charter, inclination, experience, history, I mean, I've been doing this since 1970, nonstop. We tend to focus on war, foreign policy, militarism, military budget, military weapons systems, the aftermath of toxicity from all of this, and the hypocrisy of our foreign involvements, how things blah, blah, blah. So we're a smaller organization in Vermont by far, and we tend to sort of focus on that. What's really been needed is what's being created before you right here on this show, is you need an organization of people who are not limited to organizing a subset, which is veterans, who basically have had enough. They don't want to be in organizations. It's hard to get veterans active in things.
Yeah.
They've had it with being organized. They went through it and they didn't like it.
Be fair, we asked for the service. You gave us the
So,
service.
with Rights and Democracy, you can come in with issues around the economy, ecology, political, all the supporting each other. There's a place for you in this organization.
Absolutely.
You really need to check it
You know,
out.
and the thing that's different than than a lot of other advocacy groups is that we are also not a top-down organization. I mean, you know, we have, I think right now 11, maybe 12 people, you know, who are on staff covering 2 states. Right? The power that we have are the people who come to our meetings and as members and as member leaders, you know, take on work in their volunteer time and get inspired through Rights to Democracy, bring their neighbors together and start working on some of these issues. And so the commitment that we ask for people is really to show up.
Yeah.
It's as you said. I mean, it's like it is sort of one of the most sort of telltale components of doing that. And so, you know, I asked, you know, folks to go to our website, you know, radvt.org, or if you happen to be watching this and you're in New Hampshire, radnh.org. But if you click on there, you'll find some of the stuff that Jeffrey talked about, which is our Democracy Summer town halls that are coming up throughout the state.
And regardless of who you are, you'll find a topic they address
Absolutely.
that you will feel an urge or a sympathy or a need or whatever to plug into.
Absolutely, and if there are,
I just want to finish one more thing real quick. So the other thing I just want to say is, like you said about Veterans for Peace, one of the things that Rights and Democracy, like, we don't do this together. You know, our motto, I mean, one of our key slogans is "Together we win," and we build broad coalitions. We work with other organizations and other groups who might be more single advocacy oriented on building together broader coalitions on paid family and medical leave, raising the minimum wage, you know, energy democracy, like democratizing our energy supply and to move more forward to renewable energy future. So we work with groups, whether it's Veterans for Peace or the Fight for 15, you know, Vermont, the Main Street Alliance. We work with other groups who are already doing stuff, and we bring them together. Our healthcare rallies last week, you know, we had Vermont Center for Independent Living, you know, the Center for Disability Rights Vermont. You know, folks who have been fighting, you know, and are in some cases fighting for their lives. They're down in D.C., putting their lives on the line, you know, getting dragged out of wheelchairs to protest these healthcare bills. We work with them. So because our goal is not to subsume the space that other people have occupied and are doing good work in. It is to bring more people into the movement and they may find their home in another organization also. But we give them that sort of bigger tent to kind of come in and say, you know what, we all need to kind of do this together.
Absolutely, it's a very broad and deep approach, and being able to go, you know, so broad and so deep on issues is really how we're going to build genuine power and move forward and combat, the fascism that is coming from, Washington D.C. at this very moment. If we're not being appropriate in how we're working to build build organizations and build a movement, then we're not going to do anything. And just like past movements, it's going to fail, and it's not going to be able to stand up to the test of time. And we have, it's something to be said that at Rights and Democracy, we work to really help, encourage people to be leaders in their communities, however that looks. Coming to us, whether if you have a story, write an op-ed for us. We'll help. We'll publish it. If you have a story to tell, jump on a radio show. We'd love to ensure that you are that you're being heard in the way that you need to be heard. If you have an issue that you care about and want it heard, we can help provide that vehicle.
Well, we're veterans, and we'll be marching in the parade in Montpelier tomorrow. And one of our guys, Richard Zaplinski, came up with the idea, gee, we're out here, we're talking about stopping war, we're talking about building for peace and so on. He says, you know what? Here we are walking down the street, and what's happening? And we got kind of insulted in some parades because people would come up and say, oh, thank you for your service. What we're trying to say is, lady, sir, we grew up through that service. We realized it was wrongly motivated and wrongly done. Anyway, so we turned around and Richard said, I'm going out with a little tablet and I'm going to ask people, how are you fostering peace? Just how are you fostering peace? And it's amazing. It's been like a tidal wave of response that we've had from people. Wow. They so appreciate being brought into the process of this huge problem of developing peace in the world, which we all carry. We can go back to the biblical stuff, but you don't want to get into that. Anyway.
There's another quick one I'm going to throw in. I usually have a Vets for Peace or Vietnam Veterans Against the War, sometimes both buttons on. And somebody will say, thank you for your service. And I will say, I'm glad you appreciate the nearly 50 years I spent working for peace with Vietnam Vets Against the War and Veterans for Peace.
Yeah.
God knows I did nothing for this country. All I did was make a lot of people rich by helping to kill 6 million innocent people in 3 different countries, poison their land and give them genetic defects, and we're still doing it and I'll name a couple of wars. And I'll say, thank you for your appreciation. Let's stop this madness and keep our troops home so they don't get hurt or hurt other people. I've gotten some incredible conversations going at it. That's why I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Well, most people in America never thought, because we have TV and sound bites and they tell us what to think.
Right. And that's
Reality.
Yeah. And Jeff just mentioned that too, the sort of the deep organizing. And I mean, I think a lot of the beauty of our organizing teams and how these work, and Grant can kind of attest to this. I mean, it's like we actually sit around and have a conversation. I mean, we have a facilitator's agenda to kind of keep us sort of, moving through, but we actually have a conversation, and people can bring something to the table and have it discussed.
And respected.
And respected and valued and sort of and lifted up. And I think it's been, those types of conversations, whether it's one-on-one or in those group settings, is really where things start. And I think Jeff mentioned too before, but it's worth reiterating, we endorsed 37 candidates in 20, and the political side of what we do is what makes us a little bit different and a little more unique. We are a C3 organization, so we can take tax-deductible contributions. We are also a C4. We also have a C4, which is where we do a lot of our advocacy work, because then it allows us to be political. Because the nature of the beast right now in this country is that in order to affect change, we need to be reclaiming the political power that is not bestowed upon us by corporations, but by a constitution and by the way in which the fabric of our country has been sort of set up and our communities are organized. So we work with folks to sort of reclaim that part of it. So out of 37 candidates, 21 We'd recommended another 12, another 7 of those won. You know, we're talking about
Great.
candidates, and in March,
Yeah.
you know, candidates who ran and won in places like Rutland. I mean, we're not talking about like
Yeah.
bastions of leftist areas.
No,
And
Rutland's
Yeah, right.
conservative.
it is, and
Yeah.
we're talking. So this is what happens when leaders come up through,
Yep.
you know, the ranks of their own community, are respected and build their own base of community power.
Because they talk like their neighbors do.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and they're not talking down. This isn't the sort of old school organizing model where
Yep.
people,
Elect me
people
and I'll
perish.
take care of everything
Exactly.
and put pot in your chicken.
I studied this very well, and
You
I
don't
know
get my vote.
exactly what I'm how you're
Yeah.
gonna make this life better for you.
It's that I think it's really that whole neoliberal mindset of I know what's best. This is how we're gonna do it. Trust me, just listen.
Right.
And you know, you can't tell me how to fix my neighborhood that I live in. I can tell you how to support me in that, and that's it's a little bit. It's interesting that is, you know, now the conversation. That's, you know, that's the way that we're doing things, but that's also, we should have been doing it like that a long time ago.
Yes.
Oh, Jeff, you just triggered my Act 46 response.
Yeah.
You know what I came up? I've lived through 3 of these, 1958, 1969, and now this recent school consolidation stuff. You know what I finally came up? I talked to our school superintendent. She said, send it on to the state. Who knows going to listen? But I said, look, you guys are educators. Educate means to educe. You lead out from someone what the solutions are.
Mm-hmm.
You want to solve this problem? You see a big money problem in the state and so on. All right, I got a solution for you. You're educators. Develop a civics course. Call it whatever you want. Could be child play, it could be family and life and grammar school and so on. And you have the teachers and the kids presented with the problems that you're facing.
Yeah.
How many lollipops can we afford today after school? Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they'll solve it for you. You bring it forward, you look at the wrinkles, talk back, just like you would be a teacher correcting some genius's paper. Oh, gee, I got a few complaints about this, but then, yeah, and talk it over. You got a thesis, you got action, you have a legislator that can sit back and have their lollipops, and then they vote.
Yeah, we actually have a leader who's part of our STO, I believe is part of the STO organizing team.
Yeah.
Who's interested in working with Rights and Democracy. Well, it'd be through us, but a little bit more of really trying to figure out how to do that kind of like Rights and Democracy one-on-one, like helping people understand, you know, what are the sort of the core basics of democracy in our country and rights and what you have, because we don't teach those civics as much anymore. I mean, it's something that's gone by the. I mean, you know, I'm just old enough, but not too. I mean, we had that. I mean, you know, we had those kind of humanities courses. You know, at North Country Union High School, we did talk about this stuff. We talked about the mechanics of government. You know, I took part in Boy State here in Vermont, which was, you know, model government. Like you went to the State House and you had to actually form and organize, you know, everything from a local town to a state government in a matter of, you know, a few days. And you had to
And
understand
for those of you watching the show today, keep this in mind for both Rights and Democracy and for Veterans for Peace. If you have the connections, get us into your schools to talk with the kids. Why?
Absolutely.
Because those kids are the future, and ultimately they are the ones that we're doing this for. I mean, I'm probably the oldest guy here. I'm 71. I'm in great shape, but I'm not going to be here another year. I'm figuring another 20, 30 years.
He's a kid.
I'm an optimist, and a high energy optimist. But the point of it is, whatever changes happen over the next 5 or 6 or what decade, they're probably not going to affect me all that much. But oh my God, will they impact the kids that are the future, not just of America, this country, but the future of the world.
Right.
Because America is so powerful that it's a lever on what happens in the rest of the world. Get us in to have discussions or presentations with Q&A so we can be challenged. And sometimes we're not right, and we need to be called out or corrected. We're not perfect, but we can make people think, and getting people to think is something that doesn't seem to happen all that much anymore in public forum.
Absolutely, and I'd like to even make a plug on the same front is like getting us into the schools is important so that we can come have these conversations, because they are the future, but also speaking to my generation, we're just at the age where we're able to come into power and take positions and run for office or get on city council and create the change that we want to see. Not to quote Gandhi, because that's everyone uses that, but people don't do it as much. But it's important that we start taking the reins and being intentful about it and coming together, find your community, whatever it is, find your tribe, and help uplift and do more. And remember that building. You don't have to step on the necks of others to uplift yourself. We rise together, and together we win.
Yeah, and I will say, just sort of, just to get back, I mean, what we just saw in Burlington, where a lot of Rights and Democracy members got behind, a city council candidate, in a very conservative part of the city. Someone who like you lived in the neighborhood for only a little time. He's a guy with a young family. His name's Ali Jang. He's a new American. I mean, he came here. He's making his life here. He's making an impact every day. With the school kids and the families in this community. He ran, and with a lot of support and building that kind of power in his neighborhood and talking to people one-on-one, knocking on every door, having community come together. He won with 62% of the vote in a four-way race against two previous city council candidates who had been on the city council. And I think
much more than just name recognition.
Nobody knew who he was, right? He had to introduce himself and actually, and overcome those sort of racial barriers and stereotypes and sort of the internal racism of our sort of political system. And but it was through that power of him talking with and like his neighbors and sharing their concerns that he got there. And I will also put one more plug in too, because I think that the thing that keeps Rights and Democracy going,
plugging,
and the things that keep Veterans for Peace going. Let's not dance around it. We're a C3, we're a C4. Member donations. That's part of what we look for. This member power is not just. We see power as as a couple of things. Power is organized people and it's organized money. Right now, and that's how Rights and Democracy views power. And so power is, so if you become a member of Rights and Democracy, it's not like we require you to, give $5 a year or $5 a month, but many do. And and the more that you give to organizations like that, the more power that we have.
Organizations have expenses.
They do.
And every little bit goes a long way. A little bit goes a long way.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether it's the Republicans, the Democrats, the Ku Klux Klan and Aryan nations, or the communists for the overthrow of everything. And it's the point. Any organization has expenses. And they need funding.
And when we're looking at the dynamic of you've got the right versus the left, the right is extremely well funded. They've got the Koch brothers financing massive campaigns. Please, I'd like to challenge anyone in here, when was the last time someone came to their door canvassing for
the Koch
brothers?
brothers.
For the Koch brothers.
Hey,
it doesn't happen.
That happened to us.
Really? You had one. I've never seen that before. But you've got these organizations on the left that are.
We had a Rights and Democracy person come to you.
Yeah, I did.
We had Elise Greaves actually. She
in Waterville.
Yeah. But the left is by virtue underfunded, and honestly, that's a way that'll help keep us honest. But in order to make movements happen, we need donations, and small donation from you now will help us do the work.
And not all of it just goes like staff people like myself and Jeff. I mean, we're able to sort of help fund member leaders both in New Hampshire and Vermont to go to like national conferences where other member leaders like them from around the country are piping in and coming together and being able to sort of lift up their voices nationally, not just here in Vermont. So I think
of it as farming the future.
Absolutely.
If you don't fertilize and water the seeds once in a while, you're not going to have a profitable crop.
Farming the future, I like that.
Exactly.
I'm gonna have to quote you.
But that's exactly it. So it's like I don't like to share away.
Okay, we're done. Thank you so much for coming.
Woo!
Thank you for watching this show.
Keep it up.
Black Lives Matter.
Thanks, everybody.
Keep
Okay,
moving.
no cut, so we're done.
Nice. Sweet.
Cool.